Good morning, my name is Gustav Wolfert. I'm the Managing Director of FPD, and today we're going to talk a bit about your life. Everybody, whenever I speak to them, say to me, I want to have a successful life. But what really is of concern is if I then ask them, but how will you achieve that successful life? Very few people have a plan. So today's talk is about how to use mission statements and life lists to script and draw up the plan that will make sure that you lead a successful life. So quite simply, this is what this session's about. It's about building a great life. And there's, like all great plans, there are a few simple steps that you have to follow. Step one is you've got to be proactive. I really like this quote. The quote says, apply yourself. Get all the education you can, but then by God, do something. Don't just stand there, make it happen. So in other words, it's great to prepare, it's great to go to university, it's great to get a qualification. But there's a point where you have to switch into the do mode, where you start doing things, where you start implementing things, and where you take control of your life on a daily basis. Now, one of the world's greatest psychiatrists was Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was professor of psychiatry at the University of Austria. But Viktor Frankl was also a Jew who ended up in Auschwitz concentration camp, which must have been one of the most horrendous experiences. It was literally hell on earth. And what Frankl discovered while in Auschwitz, when everything of value had been taken away from him, his dignity, his possessions, his family, he discovered an incredibly important thing, is that there is one ultimate freedom. There's one freedom that no one can take away from you, and that is the freedom of choice. Your choice on how do you decide to react to stimuluses in the environment. How do you create meaning and purpose out of what's happening with you? It's that small little point between a stimulus and a response. That little thing that you've been told 100 times, before you lose your temper, count to 10. This is just it in a much bigger level. Is that we live in a world where every day there is hundreds of forces acting on us. And we often become robots. You've heard the expression, they pushing my buttons. That means somebody else is in control and you're not in control. So the ultimate freedom that allows us to decide how do we respond to a stimulus, is the freedom of choice. It is, if you live a proactive life, being able to recognize that you have this incredible power that nobody can take away from you, the power to decide how you are going to live your life, how you're going to make decisions, etc. We all know that we live in certain constraints in our environment, and those constraints will dictate certain boundaries. But in the end, we still have to be proactive and we have to make the choice. We have to use our self-awareness and our independence of will and our imagination, and most importantly, our conscience, the desire to be a good person, to shape the direction our life will go into. Now, that's always a question I get asked is, how do I know whether I'm a proactive person, in other words, somebody who gets things done, or a reactive person, a person who just responds to stimuluses and to people pushing my button? Quite simply, listen to the words you use. Look at the way you write. Look at your posts on Facebook. Is your words of being in control? In other words, are you using sentences like, let me look at the options. I will do this. I can choose to do this. I prefer, I will. Can you hear those sentences, those words? They are strong action centers. Those are the sentences of a proactive person. What is reactive language? There's nothing I can do. It's just the way I am. I can't, I must, if only. Proactive people create their futures. Reactive people depend on good luck and bad luck. They often define their world in terms of some people have good luck, I'm somebody who's got bad luck. But more often the people who have good luck are the people who are proactive. Now, you've all seen this prayer. It's the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer. And it's a lovely prayer. It says, Lord, give me the courage to change the things which can and ought to be changed, the serenity to accept the things which cannot be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, I'm a proactive person, and I don't quite agree with that. I prefer this much more. I prefer this statement that says, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. That is being proactive. We all live in a society where there are huge challenges. We have to deal with inequality. We have to deal with corruption. We have to deal with weak and self-serving leaders. And in that environment, being reactive is extremely dangerous. It's very dangerous to be a sheep when the people in charge are often people who don't have your best interest at heart. So be proactive. Do not accept things that are unacceptable. Change those things. So there's a golden rule to being proactive and living a proactive life. And that is, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. If you wait for people to give you permission, you might wait till the end of your life. But remember, this is only if you're serving the greater good. If you are using proactiveness for selfish and for personal agendas, there will be consequences. If you choose to steal, there will be consequences. But if we are proactive, we will also acknowledge that we will make mistakes. And that's fine. We learn from our mistakes. The big thing is always admit your mistake, acknowledge that mistake, act on it, do something remedial, fix it. I always say to the people in my organization, I've never fired somebody for making an honest mistake. But I have fired people for hiding mistakes. Because if I'm not aware of the problem, if I'm not aware of the mistake, if it's being hidden away from me, then I can't be proactive. I can't respond to it, and I can't fix it. Step 2, in our simple 2-step process, you've got to begin with the end in mind. You're only going to have one life. I think so. I'm not always sure, but I think we get one shot at it. There's a defined period of time to achieve everything. I think the worst thing must be to lie on your deathbed and have a huge amount of regrets. And all of us, I hear people all around me saying, if I only had the time, I would. If I only had the time, I would spend more time with my family. If only I had the time, I would learn something. You don't want to have that conversation one day when you've run out of time. So start with a vision. Everything in life is created through a vision. You've got to envisage what your desired life is going to be. You've got to think of it in terms of the roles and the activities in your life. And here's a simple little exercise you can do. In my opinion, these are the 4 big domains that takes up our time and where our life operates. It's around family, and that includes yourself. It's around your friends, the interaction with your friends. It's around your work environment, and then it is in the context of the community you live in. And ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered by these 4 stakeholders? One day when I'm not there, what do I want my family to say of me? When all the politeness of the funeral is over, do you want, when people sit down and they reflect about what was your influence in their life, how do you want them to be remembered? Because this helps you start. The better you can articulate this, the better you can start defining where you want to end up. Remember, it's incredibly important that you have a script in your life. And if you do not write the script, you have to ask yourself, who is writing your script? Is it your parents? Is it your society? Is it your peers? Are you just a follower, or are you the leader? And are you sure if other people are writing the script for your life, that they have your best interests at heart? Or are they busy manipulating you and using you to serve their ambitions, their objectives, their goals in life? So the bottom line is, don't be a sheep. Don't be a robot that gets programmed by everybody. Don't have your life shaped by what you see on social media, but start taking control of your life and start writing down. And I can't overemphasize the importance of getting stuff into print that defines what your life is going to be. So the easiest way of doing that is starting with a personal mission statement. You have seen corporate mission statements, and if you haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, Google will set you free. The internet is full of great personal mission statements, right? But that personal mission statement, my advice always to my students are, identify your roles in life, right? Identify where are your roles. Remember I said there are 4 big domains: my family, my friends, my work environment, and my community. So your roles are probably in that context. You might have a role as a parent. You have a role as a partner. You would have a role that's linked to your profession. You might be a mentor in your community, a deacon in your church. I don't care what those roles are, but it helps in defining those roles and then linking to each role. The same exercise we've just done in terms of friends and family and community, saying, what do I want to achieve? And use that to define and write down your own personal mission statement. I'm going to show you now a number of other mission statements that I've pulled off the internet, but they are good examples. Sometimes they are relatively small. Sometimes people's ambitions in life is very much linked to their own and their family and doesn't include a broader community. But sometimes they are large. And those people who really implement those mission statements, they are the ones who live large lives and are remembered in society. So what do I want you to do? Look at these mission statements, look at the examples, reflect on your life, reflect on your goals, start defining them, and write your personal mission statement. More than 25 years ago, I had just qualified as a medical specialist. And I decided to explore a different part. I had enough of medicine. I wanted to do something different. So I spent some time in one of our embassies. I was in an international posting. And I discovered the first time a wonderful book written by a man called Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And step 1 and step 2 that I've shown you is actually just habit number 1 and habit 2. But it was the first time I wrote a mission statement, and I really applied myself. I sat down, I thought about where I would be. At that point, I was 32 years old. I was a young person at the beginning of their career, and I wrote my personal mission statement. And those were the days still before we really were using personal computers and handheld devices. So you had a filofax. I had my mission statement in the front of my filofax, and every day I would look at it. And as time progressed, the filofaxes were replaced by PDAs. We moved to digital tools. So my old filofax cover sat there for years on my bookcase. I'm a bit of a frugal person, so I don't like throwing away something that was good craftsmanship. But a few years ago, I was cleaning out my office and I realized there's no point in hanging on to this filofax cover. It had this intricate system where to put pages in there, they had to have about 8 holes punched in them. I would never find a punch that will allow me to put pages into that. So I decided it's time to chuck the filofax cover. And when I picked it up, inside there was my personal mission statement. It was decades later, and it was the most startling thing. Because if I compared my life today with what I wrote in 1991 or 1992, it was as if I had written a blueprint for my life. That subconscious program of looking at that mission statement every day had influenced my life. So did I have a career as a diplomat? No. I ended up in an educational and a health development environment. But again, it perfectly aligns with the 6 sentences in my mission statement. And for me, that's why we're having this conversation, because it reinforced that at a very practical level, you are able to write the script for your life. So in summary, step 1 says you are the programmer. Step 2 says write the program. I'm quoting out of Covey's book. But script your own life and then write the script for that life. And one of the things that's an incredibly valuable tool is a life list or a bucket list or the 100 things you need to do before you die. And in the example that I'm showing you behind me, these are the broad domains that comes out of my life list. These are the broad 5 areas that I thought I want to have activities in. And by the time you finish writing your list, you will have the 100 things you want to do when you die, before you die. But just be realistic. If your ambition is to climb Mount Everest, climb Mount Everest when you are in your 20s, not when you are in your 80s. It gets progressively a lot more difficult to do physical things as you age. But do this life list and look at it every year. Some of the nicer ones that I've seen my students develop is they divide their life list in 5-year blocks. They say, this is what I'm going to achieve in the next 5 years, then in the following 5 years, and in the following 5 years. And then, out of that, they do a plan year by year. But there's something hugely satisfying of ticking off having those achievements. Because remember, the objective in the end is to go through this life, make a difference, leave a legacy, be remembered as a person who used their time wisely and who made a contribution to their society. And in the end, my ambition is to lie on my deathbed and have 1 or 2 things on my life list. I'll share with you. One of my life list goals is to go into space. I'm in my mid-50s. It's highly unlikely that that's going to happen, but who knows? But then again, maybe one day that dream will realize. But if in the end I lie on my deathbed and that's all that's left over, a few blue sky ideas that weren't that practical and weren't that realistic, I would be extremely happy. So thank you very much for your time. Please go out there, write your life list and reflect on it. Write your personal mission and reflect in that, and go out there and build a great life for yourself. Be the person in charge of your life. Be the director of your own movie. Do not be a sheep. Do not be a puppet. Thank you very much.